Earlier, I spoke to Adi Koplowitz, our correspondent in Dubai.
Yes, Ariel, the big question here is how much does Israel worry about the UAE's agenda the day after this agreement between Israel and the UAE is signed? Israel has a tradition, a principle leading its security policy to hold some sort of a superiority when it comes to military power, and especially when it comes to being the strongest air force in the region, in the Middle East. Now, it seems like with more details leaking from this deal, that there is some part of the deal in which Israel gives Washington a consent to sell these F-35 aircraft to other countries, and specifically this time the UAE. From the UAE part, the interest is obvious. They want to improve their military force and to gain this military superiority here in the region. Israel will probably not give a consent for this, but it's already in discussion. We have to say, even if this step does move forward and it does develop, it's going to take quite a while until Congress approves this. And Israel still has quite a bit of time until more countries in the region will have these aircraft. But it definitely goes against Israel's traditional policy when it comes to preserving its power in the Middle East. And we can't expect Israel, at least publicly, at least on record, to try to fight this and prevent the United States from selling these aircraft to the UAE. The big question is, how committing is the agreement, and what exactly does the secret part of the agreement look like regarding this issue?
But Adi, isn't making peace at least exactly about that, about breaking traditions and venturing out on a new partnership based on goodwill, faith, and mutual interests? One could say that regarding Iran, for example, the position of Israel and the UAE is very much similar. Maybe it's a new ally, and you do want your new allies to have the most advanced arms so you can together protect the interests of the region. So why is Israel so worried and not venturing out in confidence into this new deal and peace treaty?
Well, there's no doubt that this agreement includes a wide spectrum of different cooperations between Israel and the UAE. And it even seems like this peace deal is going to be a lot warmer than the current peace deals that Israel has with its allies. However, when it comes to security issues, Israel has a very strict policy of trying to preserve its superiority, even among allies. Different countries in the Middle East that Israel already has an agreement with, such as Egypt and Jordan, could have theoretically asked Washington to buy these aircraft. But for years, Israel is pushing the lobby in Washington to prevent even its closest allies from having this superiority. This is Israel's policy, and it has to do with the fact that when it comes to security, Israel doesn't take the chance. Even close allies in the eyes of Israel are better off with less military power than Israel itself, because Israel's policy is to trust only itself when it comes to security issues. So while we can expect this cooperation in the fields of business, in the fields of tourism, in the fields of technological cooperation, when it comes to security power, to having aircraft, it's safe to assume that Israel will want to preserve the power for its own. And we can see that Israel sometimes even doesn't share all its technology and all its superiority with the United States, which is its closest ally.
Okay. Adi, it's your first visit to the UAE as I-24 News delegate there. A lot of our viewers from around the world may have visited the place, but Israelis, very few of them have. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing behind you and the reactions you're getting there from locals about this new peace deal. What are we seeing behind you?
Well, right behind me, what you can see is the skyline of Dubai's business hub. As you can see, it's very striking. It's very developed. The glamour is everywhere. It's impossible to avoid it. And really, everywhere you go around here, you see these incredible skyscrapers, which became really the symbol of the United Arab Emirates. And Israelis are already very attracted to this idea. And Israeli tourists will probably come here in masses. Now, the big question is, how will the local residents and local citizens will react to the Israeli tourists? So we've been around during the last 2 days asking people what they think of the agreement and what do they think about Israeli tourists coming here. And not only that we heard very tolerant responses and very warm welcomes, but it seems like there's a general sense of curiosity when it comes to who are Israelis and what are they exactly. And people here in the United Arab Emirates are very curious to meet with them, contact them, because up until now, Israel seemed like a place very far away. And in a few months, we might see direct flights that take less than 3 hours between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And this would definitely make a strong connection between the two